Shakespeare. Shakespeare. Shakespeare is by far one of the most influential figures in Western culture today. His work has profoundly impacted contemporary literature and media, and even vastly spilled over into our everyday lives. There have been tons of spin-offs and recreations of his plays throughout time. Some familiar examples include the modern adaptations of Romeo and Juliet, such as those by George Cukor, Franco Zeffirelli, and Baz Luhrmann. Or movies like West Side Story, The Lion King, or unforgettably, Romeo and Juliet.
Hello, my old chum. I'm not a gnolf. I'm not a gnoblin. I'm a gnome, and you've been no.
There are even songs like Love Story by Taylor Swift, and almost every teen sitcom seems to have a Romeo and Juliet episode. Even looking past the obvious examples, Shakespearean themes proudly present themselves in most stories written later than the 16th century. Additionally, Shakespeare crafted myriad aspects of our modern language. Many of the phrases and words he used, which he's often notoriously known for making up on the spot, have found their place as standard expressions in English today. "All that glitters is not gold" is a line from The Merchant of Venice. What hempen homespuns have we swaggering here? From A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare was swaggy before it was cool.
This woman is eating herself out of house and home. Quite literally.
Happy.
He hath eaten me out of house and home, from Henry IV. So, why Shakespeare? Of all the authors and playwrights, why was it William Shakespeare in particular who became the phenomenon that he did? There's a lot of plays Shakespeare wrote that I could say, but I'm primarily going to be focusing on Romeo and Juliet. So what made Shakespeare such a big deal? To begin with, he was a really good playwright. Like, really good. His linguistics are on point. He bent words in weird and creative ways to get his points across in an imaginative yet still deeply evocative way. He literally just made up words on the spot sometimes, but he was so good at it that the audience still generally knew precisely what he meant. Of the approximately 170,000 words currently used in English, according to the Oxford Dictionary, about 1,700 words were invented by Shakespeare. That's 1 in every 100 words that we still use, simply because they're the best ways to express the things that they express. Some phrases that originated from Romeo and Juliet were Wild Goose Chase from Act 2, Scene 4, and the word uncomfortable, which was first recorded in writing in Act 4, Scene 5. Uncomfortable time, why camest thou now? Furthermore, Shakespeare's story writing was pretty exquisite. He weaved together elements from the three major genres at the time, tragedy, comedy, and history, seamlessly without distracting the audience from the plot. In Romeo and Juliet, for example, though the focus is on the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare interjects with humorous anecdotes from the nurse, and even initiates the play with a very brash exchange between two guards about fornicating the maids of their houses. As a writer, Shakespeare set himself apart from other playwrights of his time by employing humanistic, self-reflective themes that most other writers tended to avoid. The fact that these themes delve deeper than just the substance of the plot means that they're still relevant to most people's lives today. Romeo and Juliet is an excellent example of this, especially because it wasn't originally written by Shakespeare. Shakespeare's rendition of the story is adapted from a poem written by Arthur Brooke about 50 years earlier, called The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet. However, part of the reason Shakespeare's version took off and Brooke's version didn't is that he altered it to feature the aforementioned humanistic themes in some more depth. One of Romeo and Juliet's themes is the ability of love to overpower reason and encourage brash decision-making. This is obvious when Romeo and Juliet both utterly defy the rivalry of their houses, described as ancient grudge-to-me mutiny in the prologue, effectively causing the deaths of 6 people, including themselves. Mercutio, Tybalt, Lady Montague, and Paris, by pining after supposedly undying love over the course of 3 days. I guess you could call it a dying love. Obviously, to a high school student, the idea of making questionable decisions justified by the ideal of true love must sound hilarious and reasonable. This theme also connects to another theme of societal prejudice leading to tragedy. Note that the feud between the Montagues and Capulets is never actually explained. The audience is simply expected to accept that the houses hate each other's guts for some reason. This rivalry ends up being the root cause of all the tragedy which occurs in this tragedy, and by the end they've reconciled anyway, with no consideration for whatever disagreement they had had in the past. And all it took was the tragic and disturbing deaths of their most prized. It's hard not to see this reflected in many facets of the world today. People will divide themselves into groups who refuse to accept or at least comprehend the opposite side's point of view, and the results are nothing but piteous. Friendships are torn apart, family members isolate themselves, Snapchats are blocked, all as a result of something as inconsequential to relationship as political opinion. Just replace Capulet and Montague with Democrats and Republicans, baby boomers and millennials, AirPod users and the rest of the world. The story seems uncannily familiar. The final and probably most significant reason for Shakespeare's fame was that he was doing the right thing in the right place at the right time. He didn't just write stories, he wrote plays, where ideally emotion was expressed not solely through language but also greatly through action. Not only were plays generally an acceptable form of entertainment for both high and low class peoples, the concept of plot through action made them understandable to even illiterate folk. His audience was huge. He wrote self-reflective plays during the English Renaissance, a period of time in which humanistic themes in art was a cornerstone. It probably helped that Queen Elizabeth herself was a fan. That was basically Shakespeare's equivalent of Justin Bieber tweeting out the PPAP guy, except Shakespeare actually did something with his fame. Last but definitely not last, the British sort of took over the world right when Shakespeare took off, so his popularity spread internationally rather than just locally. Overall, there are a plethora of reasons Shakespeare is the person he is today, but the moral of the story is to believe in yourself and follow your dreams.